Jordan, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself, and then I will introduce EB-5 a little bit.
Yes, thank you so much, Lauren, for the kind introduction and for facilitating the live event today. It's nice to be speaking with you. And for all of you who are joining, as Lauren mentioned, I'm Jordan, director at EB-5AN. And what EB-5AN is a USCIS designated regional center. We are permitted by the United States government to go out and sponsor projects, raise EB-5 capital from EB-5 investors, and then loan it or invest as equity into what you typically see as real estate developments that have a ton of job creation. Had a lot of success with our investors, more than 1,600 applicants we've helped with a pretty strong approval and track record, 100% on project approvals, permanent green cards. We've repaid investors, et cetera. So it's nice to be speaking with you and developing some good opportunities for our 34th project in the mix. So yeah, been around the block.
34, and I was there when you were developing your first one. So there you go. So let's talk a little bit about EB-5. A lot of my people are looking for visas, but EB-5 is actually a direct path to a green card. It's when you invest a certain amount. Right now, it's 800,000 or 1.05 million. And in these projects that Jordan is talking about, it's 800,000. You invested in a designated project. The project has been approved to receive monies by the government through these regional centers. And the project creates jobs in correlation to the investor's investment. In exchange for the investment and the job creation, the investor's key return on their investment is the green card, although there is a small percentage as well. And eventually you recoup, God willing, all things being equal, you recoup your initial investment and you're free to go and you have your green card and you're laughing. The problem is that we hear a lot of noise, we'll call it noise, about the gold card. And the gold card was originally presented to replace the EB-5 program. It's a $5 million option, and there's a lot more to it than we're going to be able to get into today, because EB-5 is a creation of Congress. It's approved through 2027 now, I think, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And we just went through major changes because of a lot of fraud that was happening in the industry. So we have intense compliance rules and requirements, which EB-5 Affiliate Network is complying with. And that's why I wanted to bring Jordan on today, because if you are interested in a basically passive path to a green card that does not require you to hire the people directly, and you want to have security of getting your green card, your best bet is going to be, and this is particularly true for Indian-born Canadians, because EB-5 goes back to your country of birth, your queue. And if you're originally from India, born in India, your queue is 13 years. But this is a workaround for that. These projects that Jordan is referencing, the expedited projects, so to speak, that are in rural areas that allow you to kind of get around the rules, and because they're in the public need or they're in these rural areas, they get approved much more quickly, often within the span of 6 months to a year.
Yes, ma'am. And all very good inputs for all the listeners to know. What the biggest topic at the moment is the pending backlog, in addition to the gold card. If I have to go one more day hearing those words before 9 a.m., it's going to be another day. So
see, aren't you glad I waited a little longer to do this with you?
You should have, at least until I had a glass of whiskey.
But there you go, right? I know the drill. Every day we immigration lawyers wake up and we're like, what is today going to bring? Oh boy, can't wait.
Exactly. Well, it's a lot calmer now than it was at the end of February when that bomb dropped. So we've adjusted to it. Just to start off with that, Trump can't terminate the program through executive order. It would take legislation, which would at least be months in the future if that were to even happen. From what we've been hearing, they've been kind of walking back from that language of killing EB-5. I think in all likelihood, there will be the gold card in addition to EB-5. But if they are to terminate the program or propose legislation to, retire EB-5, what investors are afforded today is a grandfathering provision provided by the RIA, the current law, the Reform and Integrity Act. So what we're telling investors is if you are worried about the program going away, then you want to get in under the current laws and regulations so that you will continue to be processed even if the program lapses, sunsets, etc. So you do have that grandfathering provision to rely upon. In my opinion, I don't think anything's going to happen, especially given the economic outlook right now. There's probably going to want to be as much influx of lower cost capital to help finance projects. So I see the writing on the wall. I don't really think anything will happen, but we're happy to help people if they are worried about it. And it's always good to take a cautious approach. Now, with regards to the Indian market, as well as the Chinese market, if there are any Chinese listeners at the moment, they are going to be facing a backlog in EB-5. It's going to cause a bit extended waits for the green card, even if you're going into a rural project, which has priority processing. Still going to be far much better than the EB-2 and EB-3 decades-long waits for those green cards. We're talking EB-5, a matter of a few years, as opposed to 100 plus years. But to your point, a lot of Indian applicants are going forward with rural projects because they do have priority processing. They have the highest number of set-aside visas a year. And we have a few different rural projects available. We have 3 loan models. We have 1 equity deal. So, really depends upon the investor's preferences, their risk tolerance, their desire for immigration, risk mitigation, investment risk mitigation, etc. So always happy to discuss them in details. But just to give you an overview, we have single family housing projects outside major cities like Charlotte and Atlanta, but they do qualify as rural for EB-5 purposes. So pretty unique in their location. We have mountain town developments selling real estate oriented around a golf course, and then a all seasons golf, ski, and lake resort, and another mountain town with a bunch of residential units for sale as well. So you name it, we got it. And try to just match each project to an investor's specific needs. No, ma'am, they cannot. So that is not permissible.
That's a misnomer that a lot of people think, because there are a lot of projects that sell these residential units like condo hotels or the golf facility that Jordan mentioned. When you buy that residential unit, that is not the EB-5 unit. The EB-5 unit is separate, but often connected to that residential unit. In other words, you can buy a residential unit and invest in EB-5 in the same project area, so to speak. But
and that's something investors need to take a pretty cautious approach to. We don't have that in our deals. And I think at the end of the day, it would be very nice if people could buy a property or a condo with their green card, or get a green card through buying that property and making use of that EB-5 investment. But it's not as simple and straightforward as that, and investors should definitely take a cautious approach to that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, whenever there's chaos, there's uncertainty, and with uncertainty brings risk. So obviously I can't sit here and use my telepathic or predictive capabilities and see what's in the future. So it gets back to what are the investors' needs. If investors are pretty worried about this, we're happy to help them get in while they can under the grandfathering provision, so that even if the program goes away, they will continue to be processed. I would say anecdotally, from my experience, probably 70% of clients are moving forward more quickly, as opposed to 30% are kind of in a wait and see mode. My opinion is as a lot of things go. There's a lot of noise, dust gets kicked up, and then we let everything settle, and it's not too different of a landscape after. So my gut feeling is going to say that it's probably going to be around, hopefully it gets reauthorized in 27, and then we kind of stay on the course that we are, because EB-5 has been working. It's been functioning for the past few years. The RIA has been having investors get approvals and green cards in a year or less, and a high issuance of visas. So things are working, and it would be a shame to see everything grind to a halt or reverse course. So I just don't think it's likely, but who knows? I've been surprised before. And again, it is, looking at EB-5 or investments as a macro level, it is always advised and good to mitigate risk. And a form of doing that is getting in while you can.
Acting quickly, right?
Earlier, things change constantly.
So much. And it's the same even in the E2 space. Like, you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And if you are interested in either a non-immigrant or immigrant visa to live and work and run your business and get a green card in the US, you need to act quickly, because the landscape is changing more than usual. There's no doubt about that. But yes, there is a lot of noise, and we have to get through the noise, but you need the professional teams to help you get through that noise. And that's why I work with the EB-5 AN team, because they know how to get through the noise and get things approved and get processes moving quickly and get your results that you need. Because the last thing you want is to start the process and be stuck. It's never going to be pleasant. No matter what your goals are, you really want to make sure that you're acting as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so from a filing perspective, or like we've just been discussing, if the program changes, you want to get in as soon as possible, especially for the Indian market, because there is a pending backlog and there's thousands of applicants, one ahead in the queue. And the longer you wait, the more applicants that are going to get ahead of you. So it is always advised, or we usually tell clients, if you know you're going to do EB-5 and you are capable, you're comfortable with the risks, then you should file as soon as possible, just to get an earlier priority date, get that visa or space in the visa line as soon as possible. Now, as far as immigration risk in the petition, investment risk, from an immigration perspective, investors should look at regional centers that have 956F approvals, specifically for the project they're looking at, which is essentially the exemplar we submit to the USCIS showcasing the project. And an investor
I'm going to stop you for a moment. What does that mean, exemplar? Because they're going to be like, what is he talking about?
Sure. It's a filing we show to USCIS that shows the project's overview, job creation, what it qualifies as, location, the structure of capital, the amount of investors, use of funds, etc. It's basically us asking USCIS for permission to have investors approved of green cards in this project. And that needs to be approved along with the source of funds for the investor before they get a green card. So if you don't have the 956F approval, you're not going to get a green card. So that's why investors should only go into projects that have the 956F, or with regional centers who have gotten 956F approvals for virtually the same project. Otherwise, you are risking the 526E, the application for the conditional green card, to be declined. Now, for the permanent green card, that's where the job creation comes into play, where each investor needs at least 10 jobs created.
But remember, these jobs are not jobs that you create. These jobs are jobs that the project creates. So you're investing and they're creating the jobs so that you get the green card based on the project's job creation. You're not managing them. They're not your W-2 employees. They're either employed or 1099 independent contractors through these formulas and economic impact reports that the regional center has produced, or the project that's being sponsored by the regional center.
Spot on. Exactly. So it's based upon money being spent, and we take those funds and expenditures, run it through a formula and an economic model, and it outputs a total number of job creation. So yeah, very well said. Not W-2s hiring by the project. And that's not the investor's responsibility. It's ours to verify that the money was spent on eligible line items. And the ways of mitigating risk that the jobs won't be created, in other words, mitigating the risk that you'll be declined of the permanent green card, you want to go into projects that are under construction, fully entitled, fully capitalized, so that there is as little risk of a project stalling out as possible. Because if it's fully capitalized, it has all the permits, they're spending money, they're actively under construction, then chances are it's probably going to continue, barring any unforeseen or crazy circumstances. And then the best way to entirely mitigate the risk on this aspect is going into a project that has created the required number of jobs already. Because typically projects have large cushions where there will be thousands of jobs created. Maybe each investor has 3-4x the number of jobs. But by the point you're investing, it might have already taken that off the table and created 2,400 jobs when all that are needed are 2,000. Therefore, your permanent green card will be secure. So that's ways you can mitigate immigration risk. And then from an investment perspective, because we could spend hours talking about this, I'll keep it pretty simple. With an investment, obviously project viability is huge. And if you're going into a project you didn't think was viable, you might not be the most savvy financial investor. But what I often tell investors is everyone's going to tell you their project's viable. Everyone's going to say it has a good structure, conservative underwriting, look at the performance, yada, yada, yada. And that's fine and dandy, but to just rely on this is, I think, setting yourself back, because it's forward looking and you're being hopeful, optimistic with these projections. What we feel investors should focus on to mitigate the risk of losing any of their money is the collateral. And this is taking the pessimistic approach. And by collateral, what I mean is when we give loans to developers of EB-5 capital, those developers are securing the loans with collateral so that if they don't repay the loan, we're going after that liquidity to get the EB-5 capital repaid. And what sets us apart is making those developers pledge much more collateral than the actual loan itself. So if you want to mitigate risk of losing any of your money, you want to go into a project that has as high value of collateral compared to the loan itself, so that there's a ton of wiggle room. You have a delta to play with, and you should be able to get the EB-5 capital out safely if there is a failure, if there is a default. Because going back to project viability, something might look good today, but 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the road might be a completely different story. We might be in a recession. We might be in a COVID number 2. You'd never know what's going to happen with projects. So if you want to mitigate the risk, you should look at it pessimistically and say, well, what if the worst case happens? How are you going to get my money out? And that's why the collateral is so important in our opinion.
Yeah, I agreed 100%. The better funded and the better collateralized, the stronger your investment is, and the more likely the jobs will be created, because that's your key to success. Getting a conditional green card is lovely, but you need the job creation to be able to have the conditions lifted. And it is a process, and we'll take you through that process. That's what we do on our side. Jordan provides the opportunities and we provide the path. We help you to analyze the best opportunity within their scope of what they're offering, and then figure out how to move forward and get you all the documents that you need, prepare your petition, and all of that.
Sure. No need to thank me. It's a pleasure doing this with you. I guess a parting word that I typically like to say with investors, and it's getting back to that last point I just made. Look at this as pessimistically as possible. I'm a very hopeful and optimistic person, but when it comes down to money and a large chunk of capital that these investors are contributing, I think you should look at it as pessimistically as possible so that you mitigate your risks. Always budget, look at the amount of time developers can keep the capital, and budget for the longest amount that they legally can. If they don't exercise extensions or they repay early, icing on the cake. But what I tell clients, and this is the parting word, is don't rely on hopeful expectations given to you by someone who makes money off of selling your investment. You should look for someone who's going to be as transparent, give it to you black and white as possible, give you the worst case scenario, tell you the good and the bad about deals, and let you make an informed decision. And that's what we really pride ourselves on at EB-5. You take a look at our website, see all the resources, the blogs, the videos, testimonials. We just want investors to make informed decisions. And at the end of the day, that really just, it bases ourselves on being transparent and trying to give investors as mitigated of risk immigration investment offerings as possible. And that's what we've done. We've had a good track record doing it, and knock on wood, we'll continue that track record decades moving on.